Alright guys, this is part 2 of the PlayStation VR sale video. The sale only goes until September 9th, so make sure you check out all the games that are on sale, see which ones are for you, and if you missed part 1, I'll put the link in the description below. One of PSVR's best games, and a must-have for anyone with an aim controller, Farpoint has a great single-player campaign with a fantastic story, plus a 1v1 mode, and plenty of co-op missions. Final Assault absolutely nails what an RTS game should look and feel like in VR. For $5, you can't go wrong, even if you're new to the genre. Firewall Zero Hour continues to be the most popular multiplayer game on PSVR, with most gamers having hundreds of hours racked up in its single game mode. For $10, it might be time for you to join the party. Five Nights at Freddy's Help Wanted takes a lot of new and classic FNAF stages and makes them insanely scary in VR. If you think this is a game for kids, think again. However, if you are thinking about picking this one up, grab the bundle instead that includes the Curse of the Dreadbear DLC for just $3 more. Farpoint isn't a long puzzle game, probably only about an hour or so, and you never leave the confines of an elevator. But for $3, you might want to check it out, especially since the sequel is coming to PSVR soon. As it turns out, you can make a VR soccer game where you control your legs with the move controllers. The learning curve sucks, but it's manageable. But seriously, only die-hard fans of the sport need to play. Form is a weird sci-fi puzzle game with some extremely simple puzzle solving. I liked it as an experience, not so much as a game, but even for $6, there are way too many better puzzle games on this list. Even on sale, Fruit Ninja VR is way too expensive. This is the most bare-bones version of the game I've ever played, so without all the extras and unlockables, you might as well keep playing this one on your phone, or your Vita. Fuji is a sleepy exploration game that should have appealed to me as a fan of artsy indie games, but I dropped out only after an hour or so, and never went back. If you grew up loving Rube Goldberg machines like I did, don't hesitate picking up Gadgeteer. There are a ton of pre-made puzzles for you to solve, but seeing what other people have made in the open-ended creative mode is amazing. Ghost Giant looks like Animal Crossing, plays like a classic Lucasfilm adventure game, and was way more emotional than I could have possibly expected. It's simply beautiful. If you're looking for a good variety of weapons, gratuitous cartoon gore, and goofy physics, Arena Fighters in VR don't get too much better than Gorn. It's a lot of fun, even if the fun is a little short-lived. Playing as Phil Connor's kid in this straight-up sequel to Groundhog Day can be frustrating, but if you're willing to push through, there's a great story here for fans of the original movie. Gun Club VR is the ultimate game for gun fanatics. There's realistic target shooting, zombie modes, and a ton of weapons to unlock. It's an awesome game. If you love Gungrave back on PS2, don't ruin your memories with this game, which focuses on sending endless waves of enemies at you in small arenas, and doesn't feel nearly as fun or fluid as the games you remember. Oddly, this standalone, lower-res expansion to Gungrave VR is the better of the two games, but still not worth your time. There are way too many wave shooters on PSVR to focus on ones that don't deliver, and although $3 is the right price here, Guns and Stories just drags in drags from the very first stage. Before Beat Saber, Audica, Electronauts, and Synth Riders, there was Happy Drummer. It was fun and charming, but doesn't quite have the addictive gameplay loop needed to recommend it. I've tried Harmonix Music VR multiple times after hearing how wrong I was about it, and never found anything that felt like more than a cheap launch title experience. So let's move on. Even if you're a fan of Hatsune Miku, this rhythm game is really unsatisfying. Placing your hands to hit rings that are randomly thrown at you doesn't feel rhythmic, or fun. Probably one of the most unique games on PSVR is launch title Headmaster, where you're simply bouncing oncoming soccer balls off your head to hit targets. But the challenges here are a blast, and the story is creepy as hell. It's a PSVR classic. You can skip this one. Hex Tunnel looks like a screensaver, and kind of plays like one too. Hitman 3 was shoved into this sale at pretty much the last second, but if you don't own it, you should probably think about it. It's one of the most graphically impressive games for PSVR, and each level is one giant sandbox with a ton of moving parts, and plenty of ways to finish your mission. The only drawback is the lack of move support, but that shouldn't keep you away from this one. Staring up at stars and constellations in VR might be meditative for some, but I'd rather lay by a stream in Skyrim and look up at the sky. And have a game to play when I got bored 5 minutes later. Hustle Kings VR looks great, but unfortunately, Poorly implemented move controls ruin what could have been a fantastic online billiards game. I Expect You to Die is a super polished secret agent escape room game. The sequel just came out, so if you're new to the series, grab this one while it's half price. If you've always wanted an Uncharted style game in VR but you haven't played Immortal Legacy, you're out of your mind. It's about 4 hours long, and once you get used to the controls, you'll have an absolute blast with this one. In Death is practically a classic horror roguelite at this point, and almost never goes on sale. The intensity never lets up no matter how many times you play, and actually the more you play, the harder it gets. For $12, you should definitely consider picking this one up. Intruder's hide and seek is pretty uneven, but once you get past its rough character models and pretty terrible voice acting, you'll find a fun horror game that gets darker and darker as you go. It's $2, grab it. Just in Time Incorporated is a true hidden gem that gets overlooked because of its graphics, but going through each level trying to save your clients from death in a slow motion puzzle game like format makes this one worth every penny. If you have friends that like to play games with you, you need Keep Talking and Nobody Explodes. One person's in VR trying to defuse a bomb, and everyone else is flipping through a bomb defusal manual, telling you what to do. It's super stressful, but so much fun. We've got quite a few zombie shooters on PSVR, but Killing Floor Incursion has stunning graphics, 2-player co-op, puzzles, and an endless horde mode. There are a few bugs that might even be game-breaking, so keep that in mind when making your decision. Managing a group of kittens and kittened is fun and goofy, but once I put it down, I never picked it back up. And the fact that Neku Atsume just showed up in the North American PlayStation Store today means that the Ultimate Kitten game is no longer kittened. Knockout League is as close to Mike Tyson's Punch-Out as we've gotten in VR yet, meaning it's more of a puzzle game where you look for tells, dodge attacks, and wait for the right time to pummel your opponent. It's an amazing deal at $6. Kona is unfortunately blurry and only uses click turning, but for $4 you're getting a full-length adventure inspired by Twin Peaks and the X-Files. The VR port could have used a little bit more love, but I still think it's worth experiencing anyway. Chorus gets a ton of rightfully deserved love from PSVR gamers for its challenging gameplay and 4-player competitive matches. It doesn't look nearly as good as other RTS or tower defense games, but few games play this well. $15 seems like the right price for LA Noire: The VR Case Files. It only has about a third of the missions from the original LA Noire, and the beautiful open world is painfully underutilized. Still, you've got to admire the ambition here.
Did they send some uniforms around?
I'm a huge fan of VR, horror games, and escape rooms, but Last Labyrinth puts these three things together in pretty much the least immersive, least appealing way possible with some truly terrible puzzles, leaving me with only 1 or 2 scenes in the entire game that didn't feel totally ruined. You know, I was really ready to hate on Let's Create Pottery VR, but I found myself strangely entranced by this one. Making and selling pottery to buy more materials and paints was fun, though your mileage will vary. Even though Gun Club VR seems to outclass Lethal VR in every way possible, this is still a really fun arcade shooting gallery. You'll blast through all the stages in about 45 minutes, but going back to beat your high scores is where the fun really is. Okay, let's face the facts. Loading Human Chapter 1 will never see a Chapter 2, and even at launch the control scheme felt awkward. But if you're down for a slow-paced adventure that takes itself way too seriously, this is actually $2 well spent. Lunarstone is a wave shooter that's hiding beneath the veil of something more. The unlockable weapons are horribly unbalanced, and the entire game is really light on content. It's kind of a mess, and you should probably skip it. Flying around as Iron Man in VR is an unforgettable experience, and the move-controlled weapons are implemented perfectly. The problem here lies with the lack of enemy variety, and pretty much any time you play as Tony Stark and not Iron Man, the game comes to a screeching halt. Problems aside, this is a fun game with a memorable story. Exploring worlds, inhabiting people, creating masks, it all sounds great on the surface, but Mask Maker is seldom fun, and has frame rate issues that still haven't been addressed. I'd wait for a better sale, and a few more patches. As the only MOBA I can think of on PlayStation VR, Megalith doesn't have too much competition, but there's barely any content here. No one ever played, even at launch, and even after hours of playing, I still couldn't find the hook. Whereas Astrobot's a platformer designed for VR, Marvel seems more like a flat-screen N64 platformer that was shoved unceremoniously into VR. It's a fun game, and for the price I think it's absolutely worth checking out. Just keep your expectations in check. You've got to hand it to the Binary Mill. After a launch, they listened to everyone's complaints and made Mini Motor Racing X the game we wanted it to be, meaning there's a super intense first-person mode, an RC Pro-Am third-person mode, and a ton of vehicles to unlock and upgrade. It gets repetitive fast, but it's still a total steal for $6. You know, for all the talk about Time Crisis earlier in this sale video, very few PSVR games feel quite as Time Crisis-like as Mortal BLITZ does. Adding slow motion telekinesis powers to the mix makes killing bad guys way more fun. Sure, it's short and repetitive, but that's what makes the sale price perfect. There's no campaign in Moto Racer's VR mode, just empty tracks to practice time trials on, which gets old really fast. And once you've seen all the tracks, it's doubtful you're going to go back for more. Alright you guys, we're halfway there. Parts 3 and 4 of the sale video will be posted over the next day or two.